Live from our 7 Tasmania studios, your nightly news with Kim Miller begins now.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. Well, first tonight, a woman whose sexual harassment allegation was aired publicly in Parliament says she feels like collateral damage. Speaking with our reporter Meg Sides, Alicia says she now has major concerns about the independent review currently underway into her case.
Making the trip from Perth to give evidence at the Commission of Inquiry into Child Sexual Abuse, describing the toll her employment at Ashley Youth Detention Centre has had, leaving her
acutely stressed and traumatised. I still don't sleep at night because I have had to sit with knowing what is occurring at Ashley without anyone listening to me until this week.
Almost 2 years ago at Ashley, she made her own formal complaint regarding sexual harassment by a co-worker. The outcome aired publicly in Parliament earlier this month.
I've been advised that no breach was found in relation to the investigation.
A formal complaint has now been finalised against the Secretary of the Department. An independent 30-day review into the internal processes was announced by the Premier.
In terms of reference, we'll both look at the process of the ED5 investigation that went on, but also it's been broadened to cover any other complaint.
Alicia says she has major concerns.
The outcome is not being considered for review, even if they found a thoroughly corrupt investigation. The outcome remains the same.
One of her biggest worries:
a person who sexually harassed me at work gets away with it.
A government spokesperson says the investigator has the scope to review and report on any matter and will look at whether there are any deficiencies in the final determination.
It's been extended to 60 days. The investigator didn't even make contact with me until about the 2-week mark, after me asking to be contacted numerous times.
When it comes to the findings of the review...
Look, I don't think that I can keep the outcome of a review secret. That's my personal view, but I would take advice from the Solicitor General.
The Premier seems to think he has the right to release highly sensitive, personal, humiliating information to the public without my consent.
A long process drawing out even further. Meg Sides, 7 Tasmania News.
Labor State President Ben McGregor is under pressure to resign as he threatens legal action following a sexual assault allegation. Mr McGregor has been accused of sending an offensive text message to a former colleague 6 years ago, an allegation the complainant later chose not to pursue. He subsequently pulled out of the race for the seat of Clark in April. But State Secretary Stuart Benson is calling on Mr McGregor to quit his role, saying it is untenable for the Tasmanian Labor President to also be considering defamation charges against his own party. Labor has unanimously passed a motion of no confidence in Mr McGregor. A gastro outbreak at the Northwest Regional Hospital's Spencer Clinic has forced the cancellation of new admissions, with 7 patients so far infected. Visitor access has also been restricted. Meanwhile, pressure continues to mount on the state's health service, with nearly 15,000 people presenting to our hospital emergency departments in August, according to the government's health dashboard. That figure is nearly 1,400 more than the same time last year. Elective surgery waiting lists have improved, with the number of patients dropping from a record high of more than 12,000 in January to just under 11,000 in August. Ambulance response times have improved from 15 minutes to 14 and a half. A 4-year-old girl who was hit by a car in Clermont earlier this week has died in hospital. The girl's father was trying to fix their car, which had broken down on Cadbury Road, when the little girl opened the door and ran into the path of an oncoming vehicle. Police say she died at the Royal Hobart Hospital last night. A report will be prepared for the coroner. The nursing union has warned a staffing crisis is headed for Tasmanian hospitals when the state's vaccine mandate begins at the end of October. Though 80% of health workers are vaccinated, it's warning many would rather quit than be forced to get the jab.
A health system in crisis, without nurses to spare.
We don't have the luxury of being able to say to any nurse or midwife or healthcare worker, your services are no longer required, because the reality is we need every single healthcare worker in this state.
The ANMF is warning some will leave the workforce if told to get a vaccine.
When this mandate was announced, the Deputy Premier and also the Secretary for Health suggested that there would be a suite of options available to those who can't be vaccinated against COVID-19, but certainly we've heard since then that the options being offered to staff are to either receive the vaccination or have their employment terminated.
With no answer on why low-risk options like jobs in contact tracing or telehealth aren't on the table, the Secretary of Health says she doesn't believe huge numbers will leave.
In terms of the aged care mandatory vaccination directive, which came into effect on the 17th, it did come right down to final days, and we were monitoring individual by individual and working with those individuals to encourage them to vaccinate.
With 54.5% of eligible Tasmanians fully vaccinated, a reopening plan is on the horizon, the Premier today committing to releasing it in mid-October.
Releasing that modelling will provide Tasmanians with an opportunity both to consider the reopening plan but also be fully cognisant of what the risks are going to be and importantly how we intend to manage them.
The borders are already open for some though. Quarantine in the home beginning today for Tasmanians stuck in regional New South Wales, while extra hotel quarantine places have opened up. Josh Duggan, 7 Tasmania News.
A Tasmanian man has been fined more than $1,500 after he arrived from Melbourne yesterday. The 61-year-old entered the state on a flight into Hobart and had been in regional Victoria. Checks of the G2G system found he had been rejected on 4 separate occasions this month. The man has been ordered into quarantine. In around 24 hours' time, Melbourne and the Western Bulldogs will take to Perth's Optus Stadium for a historic AFL Grand Final matchup. Here, locals are preparing for the game, with some lucky fans making a last-minute dash to Western Australia to be part of the occasion.
It's footy's equivalent of landing the golden ticket. A call from a friend has this Bulldog fan on the plane for the biggest match of the season.
I missed 2016, so this is the first chance, yeah, so hopefully it's not our last, but soon see.
Perth, the destination of choice at Hobart Airport today, with extra flights in place. For some, their trip came out of the blue.
I went to the Bill Swell luncheon last Friday and won a package.
Others are watching from home. Melbourne fans hoping to end a 56-year drought.
64 was the last one.
Do you remember much about that?
I was alive.
Even the Premier is on the Demons bandwagon.
Before I hand over to Kath, I'll just give a nod to Dr Veach and say go Melbourne.
Demons and Dogs merchandise also hot property. This Launceston store selling more in Grand Final week than when the state hosts an AFL game.
This year would have to be the first year that's been an even kill for both teams, which has been good.
Pubs and clubs also preparing for the big day. Customs House calling extra staff off the bench.
We've got quite a few bookings in the restaurant already. People know that we'll have it on the screen in there, and I dare say the restaurant's going to be pretty full.
Extra police patrols also in place, with revellers urged to enjoy the night responsibly.
We understand a lot of people will be out celebrating with family and friends, and if you are using alcohol, use it responsibly.
Meanwhile, Tasmania's bid for an AFL side has landed a new but familiar recruit. The Premier talking to former Hawthorn coach Alistair Clarkson this morning about playing a role in the process.
Clarko wants to throw his, what I would consider to be, very considerable weight behind our bid for an AFL licence.
The best way to get him back on the radar is to pursue this team from Tassie in the national competition.
John Hunt, 7 Tasmania News.
Well, it may be spring, but Tasmanians missing winter weather are in for a treat. The Central Highlands has been blanketed in snow, with more to fall this weekend.
Snow flurries falling, settling on the ground, outdoor activities disrupted, and alternative plans sometimes need to be made.
Well, we was going to go fishing, so what else can you do but have one beer safely before I drive home?
People venturing from as far as Queensland to see the White Wonderland. Its beauty as much of a shock as the temperature.
Bloody cold. We had to buy an extra few layers of clothes when we got down here, but yeah, it was well worth it.
The Great Lake Hotel fully booked this weekend.
We get a usual influx of customers when it's snowing, and this is going to be no exception.
Last snowfall, Brett Woodard welcomed 600 customers through his doors, clearing the shelves of stock.
I think we went through about, I think it was close to 48 bags of chips, 3 kilo bags of chips, and we had no pies, nothing left, so all our food was gone.
He's ready to fill hungry bellies this weekend. The unseasonably cold weather is expected to continue over the weekend, but locals think it's snow good. And just in time for the school holidays, but we are being warned to be mindful on the roads.
One thing to be aware of with the snowfall is that may affect roads throughout the state. So we do have a road weather alert for snow-covered roads.
Snow is predicted for parts of Hobart tonight, but it may be melted by breakfast time. Elizabeth O'Neill, 7 Tasmania News.
According to the university's Pro-Vice-Chancellor, the new pedestrian bridge over Launceston's North Esk River is a vital connection for the entire city. The ribbon was cut this morning on the $5 million project, which connects the health sciences site in the CBD to the rest of the new UTAS Invermay campus.
I'm particularly aware of encouraging active transport like foot, pedal and all the other various forms of new sort of transport that we've got. And the whole idea is to have a flow of people between Inveresk and the city.
It looks impressive and will stand the test of time for 100 years to come.
Students will begin to learn on site at the Inveresk precinct from next year. Well, a 9-year-old Hobart student who helped save a man's life while on holiday in Darwin last month has been recognised for her bravery. Chelsea Gallagher received a certificate from Surf Lifesaving NT at her school today.
He couldn't stay above the water, so I had to give him some of my stuff that I was holding on to. And then the lifeguard jumped in and helped him go back to shore.
Chelsea's dad says it's thanks to her years of swimming lessons that enabled her to come to the man's aid. The trails surrounding Mount Wellington will soon play host to a gruelling test of endurance. The inaugural Kanunyi Mountain Run will take place between April 8 and 10 next year. Runners have the choice of a 5, 28 or 68 kilometre race around the famous landmark. Organisers hoping to also showcase the area's cultural importance.
We have at least 9 very distinct and different landscapes, so sharing each of those landscapes all within one run is really amazing.
I have a high degree of confidence that this is going to be a success, not just in its first year but going into the future.
Around 800 people have already pre-registered.
Tasmania's under-17 Devils will leave Queensland on a high after dismantling the combined Brisbane and Gold Coast academies by 37 points. 4 goals to Burnie's Seth Campbell and 3 to Clarence's Jack Callanan helped the young side control the match. Meanwhile, our under-19s looked dead and buried heading into the final term, trailing by 29 points. But a late comeback had the side within a kick. Unfortunately, Sam Tilley's boot after the siren was off course, leaving the Devils 2 points behind. And it is 55 years to the day since St Kilda won its first and only flag. Tasmanian football icon Darryl Baldock led the side, an achievement which remains the pinnacle of the Doc's VFL career.
Darryl Baldock is the captain of St Kilda. He comes from Tasmania, of farming stock.
The BBC's decision to document the 1966 VFL Grand Final is stunningly fortuitous. Who would have known they were capturing the only time the Saints would go marching in?
There's no place like Melbourne, in Australia certainly, that has this fanatical atmosphere or approach to a league football match.
1966, the MCG.
Hailing from East Devonport and Latrobe, Baldock would join Tasmanians Ian Stewart, Verdun Howell and John Bingley in that groundbreaking side.
And I tell you what, this is going to be real close. It's through.
Beyond the sentiment of a maiden Saints flag, the grand final would be memorable for an overly theatrical goal umpire and the awe-inspiring oratory of Alan Jeans.
25 minutes to make a name for yourself like you never made before.
Before the most classic of finishes, St Kilda and Collingwood were deadlocked before Barry Breen would etch his name into the history book.
That's a point. That's a point. St Kilda in front.
Setting a heart-racing scene.
How long have they been playing, mate? They have been playing. If my hand will stop shaking, I can see the watch. 27 and a half minutes.
A desperate Collingwood counter-attack in the closing minutes was contained.
Hit the the boundary line. 28 and a half gone. There's Murray's kick to the point position on the outer side. There's the siren. St Kilda have
In the celebrations, the team swapped Guernseys, as was custom at the time.
And there they go, around the ground in their foreign Guernseys.
An image the Doc would later regret, as the club's prized moment would forever be in Collingwood colours. He declined a trip to Melbourne to watch St Kilda's 1997 final against the Crows, opting to tend to his horses instead. But in 2009, with his health failing, he made the trip across.
Horses wouldn't hold you back?
No, couldn't hold me. My wife gave me permission to come.
She did.
Sadly, he would never see his beloved Saints repeat the feats of '66, but he reflected before his passing on what that period of life meant to him.
When we went to St Kilda, it was the first time anyone in either side of the family ever moved away from Tasmania. My wife said, "We've got to make it successful."
And you made it every bit successful.
I think so, yeah.
Bit of a tearjerker for our Friday flashback tonight, Kim.
Yeah, what a great Tasmania. Now, Tom, before we go, what's your tip for tomorrow?
Look, I'm back in Melbourne. I think they'll get up.
Okay.
How about yourself?
I'm with you. I could just say I'll go for a Melbourne team. I'll play it both
Nice
ways. Thanks, Tom.
Good evening. It was a top of 15 in Burnie and Devonport today and 14 degrees for Hobart and Launceston. 16 was the top for the state at Friendly Beaches, 15 in Flinders Island and St Helens, King Island reached 14, 13 for Lowhead and Bushy Park, a high of 12 for Grove, 11 in Strawn and a chilly 5 degrees for Liaweenie. An extensive area of cloud, unstable cloud extended across Tasmania. And for the rest of Australia, some cloud can be seen over the northern parts of Queensland and the Northern Territory. Tomorrow the cold front will cross the Tasman Sea as a high builds south of the Bight. And looking at the coastal waters, southwesterly winds will reach up to 40 knots in the southeast and a west to southwesterly swell will increase up to 8 metres in the west and south. The strong winds continue for tomorrow with a gale warning current for northern coastal waters from Stanley to St Helens Point and for southern and eastern coastal waters from Wineglass Bay to Low Rocky Point. And a strong wind warning is issued for remaining Tasmanian coastal waters. A bushwalkers weather alert is current for Western and Central Plateau districts, a warning to sheep graziers for the southern grazing districts, and a road weather alert for snow-covered roads for Western, Central Plateau, Midlands, Upper Derwent Valley and South East districts. For tomorrow's weather, it's going to be a cold start to the weekend, showers easing in Hobart with a top of 10 degrees, 12 and partly cloudy for Launceston, 11 in Devonport and snow showers ahead for Liaweenie. Strawn and Marrawar reaching 10 and a morning shower or 2 for Burnie, and partly cloudy in St Helens and Swansea with a top of 11 in Orford. To the 3-day forecast, Sunday is looking mostly fine for the state, with some light showers about the west. Similar conditions again on Monday, and showers for the west on Tuesday with some possible morning frost. Australia-wide, tomorrow we'll see a shower or 2 in Melbourne and a top of 13, possible showers for Sydney and Brisbane with a sunny 29 degrees. And it's currently 5 degrees in Hobart, 8 in Launceston and 6 in Devonport. And for the footy fans, it's fine weather for Perth tomorrow and should make a good match. Back to you, Kim.
Thank you, Tiani. A lovely 25. And that is your news for now this grand final eve. Tom will be in the chair tomorrow. May the best team win. Stay safe and good night.